But first, I want to lay out for you my thoughts on the president's recovery, the media's reaction, and what it all means for the election. Let's start with the human side. It was great to see the president's video tonight, but the one I really appreciated was last night. After all the media coverage, the wild and hysterical speculation, it was such a relief to see the president's message. And there was one part that really showed he's back in business.
Melania is really handling it very nicely. As you've probably read, she's slightly younger than me, just a little tiny bit.
Yep, he's making jokes. Definitely a good sign. But it's all a sign of something deeper, too. The president's recovery is a powerful symbol of America's recovery. Yes, he got the virus because he was out there fighting for the future of the country, not hiding in a basement. He's been saying for months we need to be open, not closed, that we've got to beat the virus, not surrender to it. Of course, that has risks. But that's the American way, to take risks so you get a bigger reward. And we're seeing that now, with a recovery that is faster than Europe, stronger than anyone was predicting. President Trump is a living symbol of that positive can-do spirit. People are free to disagree with it, but it's a clear contrast with Biden. It gives voters a clear choice. Another contrast, the president has been fighting for years for better healthcare through innovation. He is the right to try president. He wanted Americans to have the chance to try life-saving new treatments, and he swept away the bureaucracy that stood in the way. You saw Natalie Harp at the Republican convention and here on this show saying she owes her life to that. Now President Trump himself putting his own health, his life, frankly, where his policy has been, taking innovative treatments like convalescent plasma, remdesivir, and Regeneron, and showing that they work. Let's be clear, the only reason these treatments are available today is because President Trump pushed for them against the bureaucracy and the status quo thinking of the swamp. He wants them available to every American. That's why he's battling the FDA bureaucrats over all this. He is a living symbol of why he's right and right to fight. But for the Democrats and the Trump-hating establishment media, the president is now a symbol of a different kind. Within minutes of him announcing his positive test result, they could barely contain their smug satisfaction.
In large part, it's his own dereliction is partly to blame for this.
Certainly his recklessness has contributed to this horrible situation.
He has time and again denied the seriousness of the pandemic, suggested that the nation was rounding the corner and in its last legs with this, battling this virus, flying in the face of science, and been wrong over and over. And now, of course, he has contracted it. And the questions are, what comes next?
The next day, did you see how they all went through the motions of decency before getting to what they really wanted to do? Attack Trump and glory in his misfortune.
This is tragic. It's very sad. But it also is something that going into crowds, unmasked and all the rest, was sort of a brazen invitation for something like this to happen.
Her message was no different to the Chinese regimes. They said the president and the first lady paid the price for playing down the virus. Nice allies you've got there, Nancy. The Democrats, of course, cynically tried to exploit the situation for partisan ends. Biden suddenly decided he needed to wear a mask while he was speaking. And these are the people who say we shouldn't politicize mask wearing. Schumer was straight out the gate trying to use this to stop Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation. And most ludicrously of all, deranged Senator Chris Murphy utterly embarrassed himself with some preposterous Putin plot. But none of it is as bad as what we've seen from the media these last few days. Their whole reaction has been one giant "I told you so. We were right all along," they smugly crow. Nothing captured that more than this today from Biden aide masquerading as a journalist, Jake Tapper.
And Mr. President, you have become a symbol of your own failures of recklessness, ignorance, arrogance, the same failures you have been inflicting on the rest of us.
We've heard a lot about herd immunity. What we're seeing now on CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and Washington Post and all the rest of the establishment propagandists is herd stupidity. Their central claim is that Trump didn't follow the science. Reasonable, intelligent, thinking people talk about science. It's unthinking ideologues who talk about the science. Tapper and Todd and Wallace and Maddow and all the others, they claim that everything to do with the virus is cut and dried. That is misinformation. Scientists are learning new things all the time, and scientists themselves disagree. Originally, scientists thought the virus was carried by droplets. Droplets fall under their own weight no further than a few feet away. That was the basis for the 6 feet social distancing rule. But now scientists say the virus travels through the air in what they call aerosols. They can travel up to 30 feet and hang around for hours. So the most useful thing right now might be to encourage the widespread use of air filtration systems, known as HEPA filters, that block virus transmission. Scientific studies support the use of N95 masks as a protection against the virus. But many scientific studies show that cloth masks don't stop virus particles. The World Health Organization, like Dr. Fauci in the CDC, as we know, originally told us not to wear masks. But even when they changed their mind, they didn't actually pretend that masks stopped the virus. The WHO said masks should be 3-layer, and that even with those, quote, the use of a mask alone is insufficient to provide an adequate level of protection or source control. And listen to the reasons they gave for wearing masks. Reducing stigmatization, making people feel included. Most of the reasons weren't even medical. In any case, the data doesn't even support what the media are saying. If you listen to them the last few days, President Trump has practically been running around the country ripping people's masks off their faces, and we're the most maskless place on earth. In fact, we're relatively high on mask wearing, and much higher than some countries with much lower infection rates. It's the same ideological pseudoscience with shutdowns. Anyone who dares suggest opening things up is pretty much branded a murderer. But more and more evidence is accumulating that the shutdowns did more harm than good, with little effect on the virus, but massive health, social, and economic costs. Establishment media won't even allow this to be said. They go on about contact tracing, but the latest research suggests that the whole premise of the current contact tracing approach is flawed. As I've said here before, an old playbook for a different disease. We're now learning that the most significant factor in spreading the virus could be clusters. Most people who have the virus don't infect anyone. Tracing their contacts is a waste of time and resources. Jake Tapper accused President Trump of arrogance and ignorance. But when he spouts off about the science, he's the one displaying ignorance. I want to read to you the words of an actual scientist, an infectious disease professor who is on the UK equivalent of the coronavirus task force. Quote, both the virus and the ways of tackling it cause harm and need to be balanced. While scientists can ensure that any strategies are underpinned by the best evidence and research, they should have no greater say in them than economists, ethicists, historians, and the wider public. Just as in society at large, there are some scientists who think the cure is worse than the disease. This is now a central choice in the election. Policy should be informed by scientists, not run by scientists. President Trump listens to the scientists and then leads. Joe Biden is led by them. He told us that. I'll shut it down, he said. All the pundits are saying that this episode is a disaster for Trump because it will focus attention on coronavirus instead of the economy. Well, that could just be another example of herd stupidity. If the president's recovery continues, if he shows a new, more positive and more human side, as he has been doing this weekend, and leaves the attacks on Biden to his surrogates, it will focus attention on what everyone wants to see, recovery. President Trump's recovery, achieved in no small part because of the actions he took to get new treatments available, as a living symbol of America's recovery, a massive contrast with the weak defeatism of Joe Biden and his threat of another shutdown. Beating the virus, bringing back the economy, recovery with Trump, or relapse with Biden.